Megamind is an autistic mood. I'm not saying Megamind himself is autistic, because he's an alien. That might just be how their brains work. Also, a lot of it could be attributed to being raised by presumably uneducated prisoners, and prisoners at all. However, he is routine-oriented more than most people, doing the same thing every single week, apparently, according to the other characters in the beginning. He cannot handle or fathom change, which is why Metro Man faked his own death in the first place, because he got tired of all this sameness. It's part of why his alleged death had as much of an effect on him as it did, too. Not saying Megamind didn't have some inkling of genuine care for his playmate, but because of how much of his routine revolved around and needed Metro Man, it was all the more befuddling and impactful. He is rule-oriented to the point of letting his assumed destiny and identity define him and all of his actions for a good majority of the movie, even going as far to insist something that sounds irrational to everyone around him. I'm the bad guy. I can't save the day. So it has to be put a different way for him to finally step up to the new bad guy, which only exists because he was so routine-oriented that he wanted someone to do his routine with again. He wanted a good guy to fight him every week. His rule orientation is played on past just his line, I'm the villain, you're the good guy, I do something bad and you come and get me. That's why I created you. It's also displayed in that when Hal does something Metro Man would never do while they're fighting, Megamind's blurred-out thought is, wait, this isn't how you play the game. Megamind didn't have friends in school and was always the odd one out. This is something a lot of autistic people can relate to, being as they don't usually understand social cues or circumstances, and they can be considered too sensitive over sensory issues, or they can even be outcasted for the very same reason Megamind himself was, being seen as bad because of struggling with things most don't, or feeling bad at things that others do with ease, and not knowing necessarily what's good and what is bad. Not all autistic people struggle with this, obviously, but, it's something that some autistic people can relate to, even if this is something that's offered an explanation to us by the beginning. And Megamind likes science. For him, science may even be comparable to a special interest, being that it's something he's done for ages and is very passionate about, even if he isn't always the best at first. He is no one is the best at anything at first. Another plausible special interest for him could be the concept of destiny. A special interest can be anything. There are certain other things that make him relatable to autistic people specifically that have little to do with the plot, even if they are still incorporated. Mispronunciations of common words despite the correct pronunciation being told to him multiple times. For instance, Olo instead of hello, popped corn instead of popped corn, and most importantly, Metrocity instead of Metro City, which is what gave him away as himself when he disguised as Metro Man while battling Titan. Also, he has a special person, perhaps, and he definitely finds companionship in different ways than most. I can't tell if his special person is Minion or Metro Man, since Minion's his best friend, but he does seem to idolize Metro Man. Furthermore, him being relatable to autistic people ties in perfectly to that Bernard is clearly autistic coded, being as he didn't look at Roxanne that much or very directly when talking to her. He said, I'm not allowed to insult guests directly, which implies some patient soul had to tell him this, and he speaks in an absolute monotone. And again, most importantly, his special interest was Megamind, or is Megamind. Bernard is not dead. He was rehydrated at the end of the movie. But regardless, this is probably partially because Megamind is relatable to autistic people, and is also why Megamind could pull off his disguise as him to someone who at least kind of sort of knew him, Roxanne. All of these things are so much a part of the plot that it feels almost intentional, and a piece of cinema that feels almost too organic for anything to be intentional. I don't know if it was or wasn't, but I do know that Megamind as a whole is so relatable to autistic people, many of which are told that they're bad their whole lives, but they just want to be good. Many of which feel bad at things even though they try harder than anyone else. And this is a character that autistic people can sympathize with and relate to, and his functions and dysfunctions are so much part of the movie that they cannot simply be ignored, but are well weaved in enough to go unnoticed unless pointed out. Megamind is likely not just relatable to autistic people, and it's fairly likely that the intent was to reach out to anyone at all who felt different, no matter the circumstance or reason. But this is just what spoke to me as an autistic person who researches autism. I think it's important to note that the signs of autism, spectrum-wise, are very different, and not everyone has all the same ones, and some of them are the opposite of the other ones. And what makes Megamind so relatable isn't just the signs he shares, isn't just the traits he shares with people that might have it, or the traits he might share with people that have it. It's the part where he's sitting alone in class and fiddling with his dehydration gun with Minion, and everyone else is doing something else. It's the part where he's the last one picked. It's that sort of isolation that comes from wanting to belong. Not isolation, well, isolation too, but also the loneliness that comes from wanting to belong somewhere that you never can belong. And from having difficulties where you just want to be normal sometimes because it wouldn't feel so bad. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please share your thoughts down below if you'd like, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm sorry that ended up a lot longer than I meant for it to. I went off script at some point.